A jury in Charlottesville, Virginia, recommended life in prison for the man who plowed his car into a crowd of counter-protesters at that white nationalist rally last year. He killed 32-year-old Heather Heyer and injured dozens more. A judge will decide his punishment next year. Joining us now is Heather Heyer's mom, Susan Bro. Susan, thank you so much for being with us. We know it's been a very long and emotional trial for you. So thank you for being here, and tell us what that moment was like when you heard the jury recommending life in prison.
Honestly, I was relieved. I think that for public safety that needed to happen, but I also felt that it was not only important that Heather and the survivors have their day of justice, but also that we send a very strong message that we will not tolerate hate.
And in fact, you made a personal decision that I read not to be consumed by hate during this ongoing ordeal. How did you manage to achieve that?
I knew that he was in the hands of justice. Had he been out roaming around, I can't promise how I would have felt, but I felt secure in handing him over to prosecution and to judgment that it was not my problem. I had plenty else to do with the Heather Heyer Foundation, and I just didn't feel like I needed to consume my own self with hate, because hate just consumes that one that hates. It doesn't do anything to the person that you hate. So in my life, I prefer not to hate people.
I think that that's a goal that a lot of people aim for, but it's not always that easy. Obviously, when you're watching...
No, it's not.
I mean, I don't have to tell you, watching your daughter's murderer in trial. What was the entire trial like?
It was emotionally exhausting. I felt like I was on stage all the time. A lot of people were focused on me and my reactions. It was particularly difficult the day that they played videos of the actual crime as it was committed, and the day that they talked about Heather's autopsy report. Those were extremely difficult days. I will tell you, I sat and cried a lot in court during those.
That must have been awful, just awful. And I know that you had an opportunity to make a victim's impact statement. And so what did you want to say to the court and to the killer?
I basically said Heather's death was an explosion in our lives. It robbed us of someone who was loving and caring and committed to family, committed to justice, committed to equality, robbed the world of a wonderful person. Someone, I'd finally gotten through the adolescent years, which were tough. I had gotten through her 20s, which were interesting to say the least, as she established herself in her own apartment and working and things. And we were finally at a point where I felt like we had an actual friendship beyond just mother-daughter friendship. And we enjoyed each other's company. A couple of times a month, we would meet for dinner and have long talks. We would text each other once in a while. Someone falsely reported or accidentally reported once that she was my best friend. No, I allow my adult children to be adults. I don't try to be overly involved in their lives, but if they want to be friends, that's wonderful for me. And she and I had finally gotten to that place, and it was not the death in the family I would have expected. It was definitely a punch in the jaw.
I think that we can all appreciate how heartbreaking that is. And you've said that you don't want Heather to be silenced, that this murderer couldn't silence her. And so what is Heather's message? Well,
I say that Heather stood that day with her friends just simply as a support and an ally to say, Black lives do matter. There's no place for hate in our community. And I use our community in really referring to our world. And everybody needs to stand up and get busy. It's one thing to give lip service. It's another thing to see some actual work done. And honestly, I can't say that we have made a lot of really noticeable changes for marginalized communities in the last year and a half. I feel that a lot of people will think that this trial is the end of the story, and this was not the beginning of the story, nor is it the end of the story. The civil rights movement has gone on for decades, particularly here in Charlottesville, and it will continue.
Yeah.
I just don't want people to think that we're done now.
Yeah.
First off, the trials are not done. They will go on for years, most likely. But
Yeah, there are
the
other
main thing is that the work.
I hear you, and there are other hate
Right,
crimes that he will be facing. I just want to last ask you, because Heather's story has gotten so much attention, because the president inserted himself in that way and it became so controversial, where he said there are good people on both sides. Did you hear from the president during the course of this?
So I've told this story a number of times, but I'll tell it again because people may have forgotten. I turned my phone off on the way to the funeral because I was trying to concentrate, and I'd already had one politician call me. And so I just turned my phone off, and we did the funeral. We had the reception afterward. We went home. Some family came home with us. They stayed a while. Then we took Heather's dog to the vet. And by the time I turned my phone on, it was about 10:30 at night. And meanwhile, I was watching the news, and I saw that there had been 3 phone calls from the White House during the funeral itself. They each sounded a bit increasingly frantic, which I thought was odd. But yeah, once I heard what he had to say, I just said, I think he's busy and I'm busy, and neither one of us really has time to talk to one another. And the only thing I ever have particularly had to say to him is, please think before you speak.
And that's still your message. You still feel that way today?
Oh, yeah. Well, on the anniversary of her death, I believe he had a large crowd of bikers come to the White House. And I have nothing against bikers in general, except for the ones that proudly display their Nazi slogans and their Nazi tattoos, many of whom were there at the White House. And again, he was delighted with the crowd. So I took that as a dog whistle. He celebrates people that I choose not to align myself with. Well, not Susan, the bikers, but the Nazis.
Understood. Susan, we're very, very sorry for your loss. We know, as you say, this is not the end, not even for you. This is just the beginning. There are other cases coming up that he'll be facing, but we really appreciate you taking this moment and just letting us know what these past months have been like. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.